Let me tell you something that's going to upset a lot of people, but it needs to be said. Nic and Olandria, they're not breaking up. They're not going anywhere. And all this energy you're putting into hating them, sending threats, stalking their every move, you're wasting your time. Because here's what's really happening while you're busy typing death threats from your couch. They're getting closer. Their support is growing, and the more you hate, the stronger they get. So, if you thought 2025 was going to be the year they finally crumble, I've got some news for you that's going to ruin your whole week. I need everyone to take a deep breath because we're about to have an honest conversation that some of you are not ready for.
People are nuts. People are actually nuts. There is something genuinely bizarre about the level of hatred aimed at Nicholas. I don't understand. And it's not just criticism, it's actual hostility. And when you strip it back, what has he done? What has he done to anybody? I'm so confused. Like, he's not committing a crime. He's not harmed anybody. He's not pushing any political agendas that we're aware of. He's literally the opposite of controversial. The man just pretty much minds his own business, as Ola does too. They literally mind their own business. They live their lives online, offline, but they don't insert themselves into anybody else's business. But it's so strange because there's an almost, like it's an emotional hatred for Nic, and I don't understand. It's so intense. And it basically, it begs the question, why is that? Hating somebody with that much intensity, somebody who doesn't actually affect your life in any material way, that shit's strange as fuck. Nic does not affect your life financially, socially, politically. He doesn't control your rent, your wage, the way you live, your healthcare. He has nothing to do with any of those things. He's not responsible for taking away your rights, your future. He's not responsible for shaping policy. So why the anger? I believe one of the people who was, this is alleged, I don't know anything more than anybody else, but one of the people who was involved in that group chat who were talking about hiring a hitman, I mean, Googling it for God's sake, to off Nic was Sanko. A lot of people seem to know who he is. I mean, I've come across him before, and I always thought he was slightly deranged, but that's just me. I heard him once say during the whole Las Vegas debacle that he wanted to hold Nic accountable. And at the time, I was like, you don't know anything. Hold Nic accountable for what? And also, is that your job, particularly? You know, there comes a point where when it stops being about accountability and it just becomes pure projection, because I think that's what was going on. It was pure projection on his part, on all of the parts of the people who were involved. You know, what's interesting to me is that a lot of this hate masquerades as concern for Olandria. But in my opinion, it's less about protection and more about possession. It's like they feel entitled to her decisions, the people she chooses to be in her life. And they don't think, for whatever reason, that Nic is good enough. So he becomes a symbol for all their hate. It's got nothing to do with Olandria. He basically represents a reality that they are not happy with, and it absolutely guts them. But it's weird. It's a weird parasocialism that, again, I can't get on board with. I don't understand. There's also something really telling about how closely these people watch him. Like, literally constantly watching him. The nitpicking, the obsession with gifts, the body language, the timing, the tone, everything. This is fixation. And for me, you don't monitor people that you don't care about. You monitor people who you are emotionally invested in. And these people, although they hate him, They're emotionally invested in him. And that's weird as fuck. You know, so I guess the question is it really hate? I don't think it is. I think it's obsession, packaged as hate. Psychologically, intense hatred tends to say more about the person doing the hating than the target. It's about them. It's about expectations that they had. Maybe they were aware of, maybe they weren't. Expectations that haven't been met. Or maybe he's not behaving in a way that they want him to behave. They're as parasocial as any Nic Olandria, more so because they're obsessive. Like obsessive in a super, super unhealthy way. And I think there's also an element of jealousy. I think there's an element of jealousy, whether it's jealousy of Nic because he's with Olandria, or jealousy of Olandria because he's with Nic and maybe they don't want to kind of lend credence to that verbally or otherwise. So it becomes this hate train on Nic when it was always about Olandria. The reality is, Nic and Olandria, they're grown. They're allowed to choose their partners. They're allowed to live their lives, imperfect or otherwise. They're allowed to make decisions for themselves, decisions that have nothing to do with the people who pour out all this hate. Nic isn't a villain for merely existing. He's not a villain because he talked to a woman or he stood next to a woman. This is all just bullshit. When you find yourself emotionally invested in tearing down a stranger who has no impact on your life, it's not about him. It's not about the stranger. It's about you. When you find yourself participating in the doxing of people, putting people's personal business online, their personal address online, personal information online, harassing their relatives, harassing their friends, sending emails to people that you don't know, expecting them to listen to you, a stranger, talk about somebody that they know and love. When you find yourself doing all of those things, it means that somewhere there is a mental degradation going on that needs to be solved and resolved. You may not be aware of it, but it's definitely there because this is not normal at all. I've been familiar with Sanko. I've heard him on lives. Matt said that already. And there was one moment that stands out during the Las Vegas debacle where he basically went on, one of the women who was lying about Nicholas, he went on one of their lives and he basically told that woman to unalive herself. I was appalled, but I was more appalled at the people who embraced him, who embraced that behaviour, who did not challenge that behaviour. And then when that behaviour was challenged, they then had a go at the person challenging the behaviour. But I've long seen in fandom that male members are given a lot more rope, a lot more leeway to behave as badly as they want before they're banished into the wilderness. I don't know if it's internalized sexism or whatever it is, but I've seen it happen over and over again. The idea that you would hate anybody to this extent is absolute madness. It's got nothing to do with Nicholas. And it's got to do with the people, with the way the people feel about themselves. Period. Fucking nuts.
Nic and Olandria have been together publicly for months now, and despite everything thrown at them, every hit piece, every conspiracy theory, every manufactured drama, they're still standing, still posting, still living their lives. And that fact alone is driving certain people absolutely insane. Here's what I've noticed. The people who hate them the most are the same people who can't stop watching them. They're in every comment section. They're screen recording every story. They're analyzing body language in 3-second clips like they're FBI agents. And then they have the nerve to say they don't care. Baby, if you didn't care, you wouldn't know what Olandria ate for breakfast on Tuesday. You wouldn't be able to recite Nic's posting schedule better than his own manager. This isn't criticism anymore. This stopped being about holding people accountable a long time ago. What we're seeing now is obsession wrapped in hate, and it's gotten to a point where it's genuinely concerning. We're talking about doxing. We're talking about people allegedly researching how to hire hitmen over reality TV stars. Over two people who are literally just trying to live their lives. Make it make sense. And before anybody comes for me, let's talk about the pattern here. Because this isn't new behavior. This exact same energy was directed at other Love Island couples. Remember when Pepe and Iris broke up? The death threats were flying. The harassment was real. And for what? Because you were emotionally invested in people you've never met? Now it's Nic and Olandria's turn, and the hate has somehow gotten even worse. People are sending threats to Nic specifically, and we all know why. It's because he's with Olandria. That's it. That's the crime. He fell in love with a woman that certain fans have decided they own, and I need to say this part clearly so it sinks in. You don't own Olandria. You don't get to decide who she dates. You don't get to threaten the people she chooses to be with because they don't meet your imaginary standards. The Nic hate is Olandria hate in disguise. We can all see it. Y'all don't even try to hide it anymore. Every time someone defends Nic, the response is always about Olandria. Every critique of their relationship somehow circles back to her. And the really messed up part is that Olandria hasn't done anything to anybody. I've been watching this whole situation unfold, and I still can't find a single legitimate reason for the level of vitriol she receives. Let me explain something about hate this intense. When you're this emotionally invested in destroying someone who has zero impact on your actual life, that's not about them. That's about you. That's projection. That's unresolved issues that you're putting on strangers because it's easier than looking in the mirror. Nic doesn't affect your life financially. He doesn't control your job, your relationships, your health, your bills. He's not making policy decisions that impact your future. He's literally just a guy who went on a dating show and fell for someone. So when I see people dedicating hours of their day to monitoring his every move, creating hate accounts, coordinating harassment campaigns, I have to wonder what's really going on in their lives, that this is how they're spending their time. And here's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of this hate is rooted in jealousy. Some people are jealous of Nic because he's with Olandria. Some are jealous of Olandria because she's with Nic. And instead of being honest about that, they've created this elaborate narrative where Nic is somehow the villain. For what? For existing? For being in a relationship? For standing next to a woman? What really gets me is how this hate disguises itself as concern. People will say they're just looking out for Olandria, that they're trying to protect her, that they can see things she can't see. But let's be real. If you're doxing someone, if you're sending death threats, if you're discussing hitmen, that's not protection. That's possession. That's you feeling entitled to someone else's life and decisions. True fans want the people they support to be happy. They want them to thrive. They want them to make their own choices, even if those choices aren't what the fans would personally pick. But what's happening here isn't fandom. It's parasocial obsession that's crossed into dangerous territory. These people have convinced themselves that they know what's best for Olandria better than she knows for herself. And that level of delusion is scary. I've seen people analyze every gift Nic gives her, every smile, every word in every caption. They're watching these two like they're lab rats in an experiment, waiting for the relationship to fail so they can say, "I told you so." But here's what they don't understand. Even if Nic and Olandria broke up tomorrow, that wouldn't validate the hate. It wouldn't make the death threats okay. It wouldn't excuse the harassment. And it definitely wouldn't mean you were right about anything. Let me share something specific that happened recently, because it perfectly illustrates how unhinged this has gotten. There was allegedly a group chat where people were discussing hiring someone to harm Nic. Not joking about it. Actually researching it. And one of the people involved was reportedly someone who's been vocal in the fandom for a while. Someone who other fans have embraced and defended despite problematic behavior. This is the same person who allegedly told someone to harm themselves during the Las Vegas situation, and instead of being immediately ostracized, they were protected. People made excuses. And I noticed something that happens in a lot of fandoms. Male members of the community get away with significantly worse behavior before anyone holds them accountable. Women get called out immediately, but men can be toxic, aggressive, even threatening, and people will still defend them or look the other way. That tells me this was never really about morality or doing what's right. It's about who you like and who you don't. It's about personal preferences dictating who deserves protection and who deserves destruction. And that's not justice. That's just tribalism with a social media platform. So let's get back to the main point. Why are Nic and Olandria not going anywhere? Because they're smart enough to know that engaging with hate only feeds it. They're focused on their relationship, their careers, their actual lives. While people are online creating conspiracy theories, they're building something real. And that's what's really driving people crazy. You can't break up two people who are genuinely solid. You can't destroy a relationship that's built on actual connection by posting mean comments. And here's the part that's really going to upset some of you. Every time you attack them, every time you send hate, you're actually making their bond stronger. Because nothing brings two people together like having to weather a storm together. You're literally creating the us against the world narrative that makes relationships last. And their support system is growing, not shrinking, because normal people see what's happening and they're disgusted by it. Casual viewers who maybe didn't have strong opinions before are now firmly Team Nic and Olandria because the alternative is aligning with people who send death threats over reality TV. So, congratulations. Your hate campaign is backfiring spectacularly. Olandria's supporters have created something similar to the Bayhive, and if you know anything about Beyoncé's fanbase, you know they don't play. The more you come for Olandria, the harder her fans go. They're organized, they're loud, they're not going to let baseless attacks slide. And they're definitely not going to let anyone play with her safety or her peace. What the haters don't understand is that you can't bully someone into obscurity when they have a dedicated fanbase that's willing to match your energy. For every hate comment, there are 10 supportive ones. For every attempt to tear her down, there are people building her up. And Olandria hasn't done anything to deserve the hate she gets, which makes her supporters even more protective. Y'all keep switching narratives, keep making up stories, keep creating new excuses for why you don't like her, but at the end of the day, Olandria is still going to have support. Nic is still going to have support, and your weird obsession with destroying them is still going to be just that, weird and obsessive. I want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture here, because this situation is a symptom of something larger. We've created an internet culture where people feel entitled to celebrities' and influencers' personal lives, where boundaries don't exist, where harassment is normalized as long as you call it holding someone accountable. When did we decide that going on reality TV means you forfeit your right to safety? When did we agree that being in the public eye means people can leak your address, threaten your life, and stalk your every move? Because I don't remember signing up for that version of fandom. I don't remember agreeing that entertainment means we get to treat real human beings like they're characters we can write off the show when we're bored with them. And I'm gonna say something that might be controversial, but it needs to be said. A lot of you don't actually want accountability. You want control. You want to dictate who dates who stays together, who breaks up, who gets to be happy. And when things don't go your way, you lash out. That's not being a concerned fan. That's being a controlling stranger with too much time on your hands. There's a mental health component to this that we need to address. If you're spending hours of your day monitoring strangers, if you're emotionally devastated by people you've never met being happy together, if you're participating in harassment campaigns and justifying it to yourself, something is wrong. That's not normal behavior. That's not healthy fandom. I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm saying this because at some point, we have to acknowledge that this level of obsession indicates that something else is going on. Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe it's unhappiness with your own life. Maybe it's untreated mental health issues that are manifesting as parasocial attachment. Whatever it is, taking it out on Nic and Olandria isn't solving your problems. It's just creating new ones. And if you've been involved in sending threats, doxing, or any of the serious harassment, you need to understand that there can be legal consequences for that. This isn't just internet drama anymore. This is real-world criminal behavior. And the fact that you're doing it from behind a screen doesn't protect you as much as you think it does. Here's the part that blows my mind. There's such a simple solution to all of this. If you don't like Nic and Olandria, unfollow them, block them. Curate your social media experience so you don't see their content. It takes 2 seconds. You never have to think about them again. But that's not what y'all want, is it? You want to hate watch. You want to be in their business while claiming you don't care. You want to monitor their every move and then complain about what they're doing. That's a choice you're making, and it's a weird choice that says more about you than it does about them. I wasn't fond of every single person on Love Island. There were cast members I didn't vibe with. You know what I did? I unfollowed them. I didn't go to their pages to leave hate comments. I didn't DM them death threats. I didn't create elaborate theories about their relationships. I simply removed them from my feed and moved on with my life. Because I'm an adult with actual problems to worry about. Let me remind everyone of something fundamental. Nic and Olandria are grown adults. They're allowed to date whoever they want. They're allowed to make mistakes if this turns out to be a mistake, which, by the way, only they get to decide. They're allowed to live imperfect lives that don't align with your fantasy version of what their relationship should look like. You don't get a vote, you don't get input, you definitely don't get to threaten violence because you disagree with their choices. And the sooner everyone accepts that, the better off we'll all be. Even if they broke up today, their friendship would continue. They've said multiple times that they're each other's support system. They're literally all each other has in a lot of ways. Navigating post-show life together. So this fantasy that if you harass them enough, they'll break up and you'll never have to see them together again, it's not based in reality. They're bonded now, whether they're romantically together or not. Here's what's going to happen. Time is going to pass. Nic and Olandria are going to keep living their lives. And all of you who spent months or years hating on them are going to look back and realize you wasted all that energy on something that had nothing to do with you. They're going to keep posting. They're going to keep being happy or dealing with problems like normal couples do, or whatever their journey looks like. And it's going to happen with or without your approval, because that's how real life works. You're not the main character in their story. You're not even a side character. You're an observer who decided to make yourself miserable by being emotionally invested in people who don't know you exist. And 5 years from now, when Nic and Olandria are still around in whatever capacity they choose to be, you're going to have to confront the fact that all your hate accomplished nothing except making the internet a more toxic place and making yourself look unhinged. Look, you can keep hating if that's how you want to spend your time, but understand that it's not affecting them the way you want it to. It's not breaking them up. It's not making Olandria suddenly realize you were right all along. All it's doing is showing everyone exactly who you are as a person. Nic and Olandria are not going anywhere. Get comfortable with that. Get used to seeing them together. Find something else to focus your energy on. Because this fight you're trying to fight, you already lost it. And to everyone supporting them through all this chaos, keep doing what you're doing. Keep being louder than the hate. Keep showing up for them. Because that's what actually matters. If you made it to the end of this video, let me know in the comments. Are you Team Nic and Olandria, or do you think I'm missing something here? Either way, subscribe so you don't miss the next time I have to talk some sense into this fandom. I'll see you in the next one.